Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we have a look at the 2023 film, The Last Voyage of the Demeter. This is episode 419. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. We are the usual members of the Castle of Horror. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media. With us are from Austin, Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Ringo-nominated writer and creator of indie comic Halloween Man, available now at Global Comics. Drew Edwards, say hello.
We are a doomed crew of a doomed ship.
And
Wow.
as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello, Julia.
Hello, Julia.
Hello. And I am so incredibly excited because joining us from the monster movie Happy Hour are our amazing friends, truly amazing friends. Historical book illustrator David Geister, say hi.
Hello.
Hello. Historian Mary Challman, say hi.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome back. And I'm reading this directly. Historian, raconteur, cocktail wizard, Scott Chesebrough, say hi.
Well, that's not my description, but I'll accept it. Hello.
I thought that you provided me with that prescription.
That sounds specifically like something Dave would have said about me.
It is possible. Yeah. Historian, raconteur, cocktail wizard. That's cool. Okay. All right. The Last Voyage of the Demeter is a film that we all knew was coming for I swear 20 years. It's also known in some places as Dracula Voyage of the Demeter, so saith Wikipedia. It is a 2023 American supernatural horror film directed by Andre Overdahl, who in our library you can find an interview that I did with Mr. Overdahl when this film came out, written by Bragi Schut Jr. and Zach Oikowitz. It is an adaptation of the Captain's Log section of the 1897 film by Irish writer book by Irish writer Bram Stoker. The film stars Corey Hawkins, Aisling Franciosi, Liam Cunningham, and David Dasmalkian. Its plot follows the doomed crew of the merchant ship Demeter, led by Captain Elliot, who attempt to survive the treacherous ocean voyage from Transylvania to London while being stalked by a legendary vampire known as Dracula, played by Javier Botet. It is therefore essentially Queen of Blood, Alien, only it's a 19th century boat with Dracula on it. It came out in August. We are doing it now because now's the time when people can get it on TV easily and so forth. So it was a good time for all of us to get together. And so I cannot wait to talk about it. I welcome you all. Let's get some opening thoughts, and let's do it this way. Let's go. You don't have to memorize this. Let's go. Drew, Mary, Tony, Scott, Julia, and David, and then we'll go into topics. But real quick, as though your life depended on it, or as though you were falling down an elevator shaft and had to tell me what you thought of The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Drew, what are your thoughts?
I have seen this movie twice now. I really enjoy it. I also sort of love the fact that Universal released, only months apart from each other, two extremely different adaptations of Dracula. So big swings with this character in 2023, and that alone is fascinating to me. The other movie, of course, I'm referencing is Renfield. Sticking directly to this movie, I think this is a really effective, creepy monster movie. I think that the version of Dracula in this, even though he is not so much a character, I think it's really interesting the choices that they made, where they sort of stripped back everything that we know about Dracula as a iconic character to really just focus on the fact that on his more monstrous aspects. So this is like a lean, mean vampire movie, the likes of which we don't see very often anymore. I love the atmosphere. Great cast of mostly character actors. Like there isn't really any big time movie stars in this, but everybody in this is a very solid thespian. Great sets, some really good monster makeup, some not so great CGI towards the end, which I'm sure we'll all get into. But overall, a really enjoyable variation on a monster that we are all perhaps all too familiar with.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mary, first of all, welcome to hell back. Okay. I'm so excited to have y'all. So welcome back and tell me about your thoughts on Demeter.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back, and from the eastern wing of the Deep Dark Lounge in beautiful, beautiful upstate New York. I knew I wanted to see The Last Voyage of the Demeter when it came out, and I saw it at a drive-in. There's about 4 drive-ins that are within a 30-minute radius of where I live now. So I got to see it in a very atmospheric environment already. I knew I was going to like it because I always like this sort of the chapter 2s of films. Like my favorite of the trilogy of Lord of the Rings is the Two Towers. I like the sort of backstory of things, and I don't think that the Voyage of the Demeter, besides from maybe 1 or 2 adaptations, was really explored. It was seen as this that particular chapter was seen as a vehicle to get Dracula from Romania to England, and I like that they extrapolated upon it. And it does feel, I like your comparison to Alien. I think it does feel a lot like no one's coming to save you, you're stuck, you can't go anywhere. And I think I like that sort of historical perspective as well. That's probably what these guys these I guess sailors would have experienced just on a day-to-day basis. But my favorite bit, I think Drew touched on really well, was the acting. I thought the actors were fabulous. The guy who played the captain, of course, played the Onion Knight in Game of Thrones, and he played the father in A Little Princess, the 90s movie. But the heart and soul of the movie, in my opinion, was David Desmalkian, who is a longtime horror fan, big fan, longtime supporter of Fangoria, and just is like an acolyte of the genre. And to me, it was very fun to see him in this particular role, where it felt very I don't know, it felt not gratuitous, just it felt very like affirming to see someone who loves the story so much get to act in a role that's so exciting. And he usually plays bad guys because he has this very sort of evil guy face, but it was fun to see him be the good guy. So that was really a highlight for me. And just to see him promote the film and to have the little bits of there's one press photo where he had he was wearing a necklace that had a vial of dirt from
you used to get that from like Marvel magazines and stuff.
Yes, yeah. It's what a cool reference. So it really like does my heart good to see fans of the genre get to participate in the genre. So it made me really happy to see. It felt like it was a really lovely pairing with I would probably pair it with Bram Stoker's Dracula. It felt very like 90s, early 2000s in a way that was really lovely, and I just enjoyed the shit out of it. So I also like the reference to Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, which I think we ought to talk about at some point. But
hold on to that thought about the 90s, early 2000s. I'd love to know more about, but hold that thought. But I want to come back to that because that's interesting, and I have no idea what it means, and that sounds fascinating. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Sorry, that's me falling down the elevator shaft as you requested. But it's in all seriousness. Yeah, I really like this movie. I got to see it in the theater. I think Drew hit upon something that I think is really fascinating. That we get a section of the story that is not as told us often. We've seen, and again, we've seen like Alien. We've seen a bunch of movies that were kind of sort of influenced by this idea, possibly. But what you get is a Dracula who's unfettered by having to be part of society,
Yeah.
and therefore we get him as at his most monstrous. Like when he doesn't have, when there's no pretenses at all, he's a monster. And I thought that was really interesting, an interesting take on it. And it tracks pretty closely to how the book kind of describes things. They, of course, since it's a movie, they put more meat on it. The cast is, as everybody said, excellent. I really enjoyed. There's some really great suspenseful parts. I'm sure we'll get into the caught in the fog kind of section is just amazing piece of cinema. I think that what they added was also really interesting. So I was down. I'd heard about the project, people trying to get various versions of this project off the ground for years, and I always hoped to have to see it, and so finally getting to see it was excellent. I really enjoyed this movie.
Thank you very much. That's really cool. And I wrote down from what you said, unfettered by being part of society. So we'll try and come back to that. Scott, what are your thoughts?
Well, of course, the danger of having 7 people be asked their opinion is that much of your opinion will be covered. But and that's happened. What I will say is, yeah, I would have to echo Mary in that I thought that this, if, and hopefully the creators really weren't doing that, at least not to a large extent. It did seem to me that it would be a perfect companion piece to the Gary Oldman Dracula, the Francis Coppola Dracula. Because of course in the Coppola's Dracula there are a number of scenes with the bestial Dracula, which doesn't happen in a lot of Dracula films. Some, but not a lot. And I would also concur with those people who voice that it is to a large extent, and I don't mean this in any kind of critical way, but it reminded me very much of the original Alien, the 1980 Alien. It's really that type of film. Both those films would make an interesting double feature. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, absolutely. By the way, I want to say that the creature design in Coppola's Dracula surely was weighing on their minds a little bit in this film, because there's so many similarities that it seems it's in you can't conceive
Well,
that they haven't.
I would say it's that, and it's also, and although some may argue it, it's also the Salem's Lot Dracula,
Yeah.
or not. That's not Dracula, but the vampire in
Yeah, yeah,
Salem's
yeah,
Lot.
yeah. Whatever that guy was called, the man who's taken over the house in Salem's Lot. Yeah, for sure. Reggie Nalder was the actor. Yeah,
Yes,
Barlow.
Barlow. Very
Mr.
good.
Barlow. Yes,
All
dealer in
right.
antiques.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're right. There's a well, we should actually have this in it. We'll go down the characters that we want to talk about, and we should talk about all the different influences in this Dracula. So I'm going to write that right now while I ask Julia, what are your thoughts?
Well, actually, that's what I was going to get into, is just saying that, yeah, it would not be offensive because the director actually states that Alien is an influence of this film, that it's basically Alien on a ship. And also that Nosferatu is a big inspiration.
Hmm.
And that's what, that's what I see as the monstrous, vampire that is like Nosferatu. And I think it's interesting. What's interesting about this Dracula is that he evolves from kind of almost a rat to then like a bat to then kind of a Nosferatu, really. When you see him at the very end of the film, and he's, about to ride off in a carriage, clearly he's figuring out how to be a human among humans and not just a weird animal type of vampire. I personally probably am the least big of the 7 of us. I'm probably going to be the least of a fan, if that makes any sense. Like I like it the least. I think I'm impressed by it. I think it's really great. I think the performance is really good looking. The effects are amazing, but it's just not my thing. I really love a sexy Dracula.
Yeah.
I love a vampire that is that draws people in and that makes them want to come, like where they can't help themselves but be drawn into him. And so that's, I miss it when I don't see. I get why they don't do it every time, of course, but I don't. It's not my kind of movie. Plus, it's very gory, which, as you know,
Mhm.
I don't like. So, so I have mixed feelings.
For sure. Thank you very much. And finally, David, and I know you've had to wait patiently. And just like Scott said, it's difficult when everybody's been saying stuff. But what are your opening thoughts?
Well, I would say that I think I'm pretty much on par with everybody here. But this may sound a little strange, but I have as a history person, I have a great interest in any movie that shows historical naval activities. Shipboard life, the nitty
Mm,
gritty details of being on board a sailing ship, the creaking sounds and the dripping water and just all that. And so, as strange as this may sound, for me, this would make a great pairing with 2003's Master and Commander,
oh
the
yeah.
Napoleonic naval movie with Russell Crowe, which I absolutely loved. And that may sound strange, but those two movies scratch two separate and distinct, very important itches. I'm a monster kid and I'm a military history enthusiast. And the thing that they have in common is this, and I'm going to throw out my 5-cent word of the day, is verisimilitude. I love just all the little details there. But anyhow, getting back to the horrifying aspects or the Dracula aspects, I think there was great creature design,
Mm.
exceptional cinematography and lighting. Just top notch, and there were fantastic performances pretty much across the board. But I absolutely loved David Desmalchian's performance.
Mm.
So.
Wow.
Oh, and one other thing. Since we are the Monster Movie Happy Hour, I made a drink that I'm calling Captain Elliot's Cherry Bounce. Now, Captain Elliot probably drinks straight rum, but I'm somewhat effete in that manner. So what I've got here is 2 parts pineapple flavored rum, 3 parts LaCroix lime soda, 1 part of cherry syrup, and you just mix it in a glass, a little bit of ice, garnish with the maraschino cherry. And if, like me, you find a jar of really sticky old maraschino cherries in the back of the refrigerator, go ahead. What's the worst that can happen? Throw 'em in. So cheers, my friends.
Oh,
Cheers.
cheers.
I'm going to
Thank you.
definitely
That,
try to make that. That sounds
Cheers to that.
It's
sounds wonderful.
very low alcohol and very sweet, so it's definitely in my wheelhouse.
Tony just
I'll-
texted, keeping the scurvy away.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll have to make
it would
real cherry bounce one of these days.
it would be so fun to have like a collection of films that included that where the set involved building a boat. Like
Mhm.
because that just always amazes me because you'd have like Fitzcarraldo, Raise the Titanic, they built a boat. This movie they built a boat. I know there's got to be more that I can think of, and what
Pirates of the Caribbean.
did they build a boat in Pirates of the Caribbean, or is it
I,
is it
I
fake?
think they
I,
did.
I know there's a Hammer pirate movie, one of Christopher Lee's first movie, that they built a ship and it accidentally caught on fire, and they included that in the movie.
Sweet.
Oh,
I can't remember what the title of the film is now, but it's about soldiers or sailors from the Spanish Armada taking over this town and running it, and the ship catches on fire, and it was an accident, but they
Wow,
filmed it.
that sounds fabulous. All right.
I think I might have seen that, or one time Amazon took me down the rabbit hole of just pirate movies, so like
Mhm.
Captain Blood, and then just you go, what did other people watch? And you just
Yeah.
watch, like there was this long string where at night, if I couldn't sleep, which is often, I just went down the rabbit hole of pirate movies and I'm sure many of them had boats built because it was just what you do at the time.
Absolutely. Okay, so my first question, I want to get into I have this thing that I do where I say what I'm about to ask about before, like that'll come after the question that I'm loading up at the moment, which is the opposite of actually preparing you to answer something. It makes no sense at all. And nevertheless, I'm going to do it. I'm going to ask about the characters and the performances next after this. But my first question is, why did this movie not perform as well as it could have? Like what was that? What, was it because it came out in August? Was it? Yeah. Anybody want to answer? But Mary's raising her hand, so go.
Okay,
crazy.
here's why I think it didn't perform as well as it did. I think that it was a high production value. It was beautifully made with character actors who obviously came at a price point. They did a lot of practical effects, especially practical makeup effects, which drove the cost up. I also think that it wasn't necessarily marketed properly, where it's giving me a lot of like, I don't think it was marketed as well as it could have been. Like, it reminds me a lot of how The Village was marketed, where that movie was a complete flop, but it's a brilliant film. I also think that this movie is very, I guess, with that, like, for lack of a better term, kind of traditional, where it feels like it's from an earlier time period. It's not like a modern horror film. It's not like an A24 film. It's not, it has a structure to it that I think is predictable yet fluid in a sense. So I think those all sort of integrated to make this kind of a box office flop, for lack of for unfortunately. But I really think it was a wonderful film. I think it didn't get its due. I really, like, everyone I talked to who saw it really enjoyed, like, it was, they, for whatever criticisms that they had of the film itself, they liked watching the movie. And I think that's an important point to say, is that I think nowadays, with film being as it is, people come into horror with a really, really critical eye, almost like they're looking at high art rather than just, do you enjoy to watch the film? And I think that that's kind of what, I don't know. It's such a strange relationship, because I think that it can be both things. And this is one of those movies where I feel like if you came into it thinking I'm here to watch a horror movie, you would really, really enjoy it.
Well, I'm not sure very many things did well during the strike either, because there wasn't anybody promoting them.
Well, also, this was released right around the same time as both Barbie and Oppenheimer, and I certainly don't think that helped, because both of those movies were behemoths and the box office. Whereas, queuing back to the marketing, like, certainly a lower budgeted movie could have done well, in the shadow of those, but nothing about the poster or the name of the movie or anything said this is a Dracula movie. And it doesn't surprise me that in foreign markets they've started putting the name Dracula on it, because I think, unfortunately, unless you are a super horror nerd, like, the name Demeter, like Last Voyage of Demeter, that doesn't mean anything to you. I think you'd be like, what is this, is this a pirate movie? What is this? And the latter posters did have the big bat monster on them, and they started saying the legend of Dracula is born, but I think it was too late by the time they started rolling those out.
That's shocking. That's shocking what you just said. I think you're right. Tony, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's also it became a weird internet thing where people go, I'm going to go see Alien on a boat, even though the original story is, we've had this story for way longer than we've had Alien.
Yeah.
Right. But if you don't know that, you don't know that. And so it became this weird backlash of like, I guess I'm going to go see Alien on a boat. And it does kind of harken back to what, you're saying about horror and how it's perceived. And if you don't exactly know it, I mean, the people who are in the know are like, yes, finally this movie's coming out, this project's got made. But it's not going to grab everyone from that. But a lot of the people I know who saw it were like, wow, that was really cool. I saw this. Maybe they, there was some grousing about some of the CG and stuff like that, but in general, it's a well-made version of this story that just kind of caught by, I think, several different things. Because I know, like, once I had to catch it right before it left, I was afraid it was going to leave, and it's because so many theaters had to make room for other movies that the writing was on the wall as far as like its release window. So it was a combination of factors, but it's a shame because it really, hopefully it'll get kind of a reassessment on video.
It's so strange to think of how many things can go wrong in the marketing of a film, and because Mary started out talking about basically the fact that the film's super expensive to begin with, because all the stuff that makes it cool also makes it expensive. Whereas if Jason Blum had produced this, it would have cost about $2.5 million, and so no way would they have lost money on it, no matter what, and and then at the same time, the same artsy instincts that caused them to spend a lot of money also caused them to get overly cute with that title. In the same sense that, I guess when Amadeus came out, it's possible people didn't know that Amadeus was referring to Mozart, but Amadeus was not an expensive movie, so it was, and also it was based on a hit Broadway play, so you could get away with being cute like that. That killed me that it wasn't called Dracula the Crossing or something. Mary, go ahead.
Well, I think this is one of the things that was like, this was a Dracula movie for horror fans, where I really think that I think it made it commercially unsuccessful, but also I kind of, in a punk way, respect the dedication to the fans, to the craft, to the genre, where it felt like they didn't compromise on their values of the telling of the story, the way they told it, and how they marketed it. I think it was all very deliberate, and I would be really curious to see if they thought that they would lose money on it, because it kind of felt like I would be surprised if they thought that it was gonna be a box office hit. Honestly, like, maybe that's uncharitable, but I think that's, but the fact that I got to see it at a fucking drive-in movie theater was unbelievable. It was the perfect place to see it. It was so cool. It was such a magical experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so I don't know. I hope they feel good about that, at least. Like, that people got to have that really cool experience. Horror fans got to have that really cool experience, and they created that.
It's possible that it doesn't even matter. Go ahead, Scott.
All I was going to say is, we could have a whole show about this, is that the way that films, even since, the 1980s or the 1990s, the way that films are marketed and how long they have a run in the theater, and all of these things seem to change more rapidly that time has gone on. So, a film would have like this would have stayed in the theaters much, much longer in the 80s or the 90s when it did. And the other thing is that the studios, as far as I'm aware, and believe me, I'm nowhere near knowing how studios run, but the studios seem to set release dates for films, and yes, they may change them for various reasons, but generally speaking, once they set them, they're set. And the main comment I've heard from all stripes of the horror community in regards to this film is, why would you release this film in August when you have these other films coming out, when obviously October is not that far away, and it seems like an ideal film to release in October, somewhere around Halloween? It's like, I don't know what was going on at the studios, but it seems like a monumental error when it's only a month later. I don't know what other
you're right.
calculations may have been in that.
It could have been that they just were so believing their own confidence in it that it just didn't occur to them, like, oh no, this can be a big tentpole summer hit, and not realizing that, when's the last time that there was a big tentpole summer hit that took place in the 1890s? And I but and again, like I say, maybe it doesn't matter, because, like, look, we all spend our time watching. You guys just did your last episode on a 1990s Lovecraftian film so obscure that you had to find bootlegs on eBay. So that's the kind of people we are. So it doesn't matter to us really whether the movie does well. But nevertheless, you wanted to go ahead.
I actually have some thoughts on
Yeah,
that.
go
because
crazy.
So for over a decade now, Universal has been trying, like, literally playing, let's throw a dart at a dartboard with their monster franchise. And with the exception of The Invisible Man, which was produced by Blumhouse, most of these movies have not connected with audiences, like broad audiences. Now with this, and I will also dial it back, even though I don't think it's quite as good as this, but it features some things that I think are good. Both with this and Renfield, they seem like they have connected with the people who they would connect, which is horror fans. Seem like they liked both of those movies. So I have this theory that perhaps, what they're thinking is long game, You know, now we've made these two movies that are almost like the cinematic equivalent of an olives branch to horror fans, and they're like, okay, we've heard you. We're going to make movies that appeal to you instead of what we did with The Mummy, which was try to make a movie that appealed to everybody. And maybe it didn't work this time around, but the next time around, horror fans will get behind them and go, okay, Universal's done dicking around with the monsters. Let's give them a chance. Let's go out and support them opening weekend. You know, maybe whenever they do like their Frankenstein reboot or their next Wolfman reboot or Creature from the Black Lagoon or whatever form it takes, because they put out something like this where it comes off like they were actually listening to some of the criticisms about The Mummy.
That's really wonderful. I have no idea, by the way. Like I would need to get a focus group together and say, look, hey, you fella who just coming out of watching Demeter, do you know what studio released this film? Like, I'm real curious as to whether people even know, other than, again, nerds like us. Tony, you thought you might have some information about like why does something like this, because you have a lot of touch in the distribution industry. Why does something like this get released in the summer?
I mean, there's a bunch of reasons. You might want to do it because you want to release the video version around Halloween, so you get your residual that. But I mean, the real, sadly, there is sometimes it does seem like kind of dartboard kind of stuff or being intractable. And on the flip side, though, I think studios are going to get the wrong impression because the kind of joke pairing of Barbenheimer started a phenomena that just like, haha, look, these are coming out at the same time. These are totally the opposite. It became the joke. It became the meme. It became a force, like where, you know, theaters were full, and there was that kind of challenge. But there's a lot of different reasons. Of course, you know, if, you know, Jason and I worked on a Universal themed, Kid Monsters game, and I will say that if it hasn't changed, I don't have any idea what Universal thinks sometimes, like why we could have some characters and not others, why some people thought that naming a character Dr. Pretorius, which was a homage to the actual thing that they own, was viewed as, no, kids won't get that, we don't care. It's like, yeah, but the adults who buy this game will. Like, I don't know.
Plus,
I can't
you own it.
tell sometimes what. Yeah, exactly. No, that was. I don't know why these decisions are made, but as far as release windows go and moving those around, I will say that it's a complicated choice. Although we've seen a lot of them move around because of strike in a kind of almost punitive manner, which is disgusting and terrible.
Oh,
but
God. Can you imagine if
Universal...
Universal...
but there's all kinds of stuff that that happens marketing wise, and when you're able to have the right channels. I mean, the machine behind it is more complicated, definitely, than I understand. But there's programmers for the theaters who know even more than me, and even they have, like, they'll ask about a movie and they go, well, we haven't seen this, or they haven't given us a commitment for X, Y, or Z. So there's, I don't know. I kind of, do the never mistake, malice for ineptitude. I'm paraphrasing.
Again, I'm sorry to interrupt. All I would say is that a whole show could be done on how studios and how they release pictures and how they promote pictures, and all of the reasons that it has changed so rapidly from the past 35 years. And like recently, studios have produced entire films and then decided to shelve them as a tax write-off. I mean, that sort of blows my mind. That sort of thing may have happened in the 80s and 90s. And I was just completely unaware of it because, of course, the news media is different and how those sorts of things get out. But, you produce a finished product and you decide that you get it as a tax write-off. It's just insane to me that happens.
I think
even if the movie's
terrible.
That's
a whole other thing. That's a whole other. I know the reasons, another reason behind that, and that is a whole other topic. There's a tied into that really briefly is also performance bonuses that people get based off of how much the debt is in a company. So the less debt you have, the more performance bonus you get, the more millions you're going to make as a
Oh
CEO.
my God.
And therefore, paying down that debt will get you money despite whatever the hell you do to your own company. So again, that's a whole other thing. By the way, my quote earlier was Hanlon's razor, which I use a lot. But yeah, I could give you. I have a lot to say about what you're talking about. but we should probably move back to Dracula's. Although
Yes,
those
yes, yes.
people are sort of Draculas anyway.
I do
They're
Mary, go
vampires in
crazy.
their own right.
I do want to highlight for a hot second. I know we're talking about, we've like referenced The Mummy, the 90s version, the
Mhm.
box office hit, the cult hit, the whatever. I remember watching this movie and thinking like, this reminds me a lot of like, it had the same timbre as The Mummy. It
That's
felt
so interesting.
it was I guess a familiar structure that had twists and turns, that had strong character acting and really good effects. Like that's, I think, and clever dialogue.
To clarify, when I was talking about The Mummy, I was not talking about the one from 1999, which was a big hit. I was talking about The Mummy with Tom Cruise, which was supposed to reboot the whole Universal Monsters thing, and was a tremendous flop. I realized after what I said, when I said that I should have clarified that I was not.
I knew what you meant.
I mean, to me, this movie feels like it's more in line with that era of reimagination or reboot, where it feels like it was part of that 90s Universal push to relook at the Universal monsters, where The Mummy was such a hit, and then everything else disappeared, and there was a huge, like, it was kind of a big deal where they put in a lot of money to thinking about redoing the Universal monsters, and this to me felt like it was more in line with that push than anything else. And Dave, you had something to say.
I think something that just as you articulated your thoughts about that movie with Brendan Fraser, the thing that stuck out with me about that movie was there was sort of a rollicking sense of adventure and a sense of humor. This movie, unless I'm forgetting, and I apologize, it's been at least 5 weeks since I watched it, there wasn't much of a sense of humor woven throughout.
It's pretty grim.
Pretty grim, and
it's a
and
bleak
there's nothing
film.
necessarily
I think
wrong with that,
that's necessary.
But there are times when it's nice to have that break.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, it sets you up for the next piece and makes it sometimes even more horrific. I think of sort of the wry sense of humor that comes through with John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if wry is quite the right word here. I'm thinking of alcohol right now. I apologize. But
that
or
is,
even the break that's in Jaws, right, where there's a camaraderie levity that happens.
Right.
It's fun hearing them
which
singing.
I think that you're correct in that. Like, maybe it could have used that. I don't know. I kind of liked that it was grim and that it was felt very like but
the darkness of this movie really appealed to my 2023 experience, which is, in fact, I would have loved it if everybody had died. Like,
yes, that's what should have happened. That was supposed to happen.
I fully expected everybody would die.
I am there for mean-spirited, cynical movies that right now that like kill the cute kid and kill the dog and kill all the livestock.
Oh man!
And
see, that you're reminding me why I didn't like this movie, because I really thought the kid would survive to the end. I was so upset that the kid gets killed. I was like,
oh no way!
It's upsetting, but hell yeah.
Horrible death, horrible second death. Where he sets
clearly,
on fire. Awful.
Clearly, the filmmaker's intent was to, shock, because that's, I won't say that obviously, especially these days, that's just typically a line that's not crossed. But as some others have said here, I pretty much at a certain point, I pretty much figured, well, everybody's going to be dead eventually. It's just a matter of when and how.
Yeah, I mean, the story itself is nobody gets out of this.
Right.
Like they find the boat. That's it. Like that's I never.
But that's kind of comforting in a way, where it's like where you know what you're getting with all of this. But I think that if for someone who had read Dracula and knew the premise of Dracula, and specifically this element of that story of the actual publication, the Bram Stoker publication, when you go into it, you're like, oh, it was kind of surprising to be like, oh, there's a child, oh well, maybe he'll make it, or oh, there's a dog, maybe he'll make it. It kind of added that element of surprise in
Yes.
for viewers that were intimately familiar with the story. And it was a fucking heartbreaker. I
Yeah, it's
cried,
genuine
and
horror,
I
right?
hadn't cried in a movie for a long time. Which was surprising, because I knew the whole story, so it was
So
and that kid
there-
deserved an award.
There
like-
is honor in being doomed. Like that is I think something that at some point these characters all get, is they know
Yeah.
they are fucked, the world is fucked, everything is terrible, but we're going to try and make this one patch of the world that we are in, we're going to try and force it to make sense, even if it won't. And that really speaks to my experience right now, is that everything is out to get you, and the best that you can do sometimes is just punch back. And I don't know, like I find tremendous comfort in that idea, because like we're all going to be rotting corpses at one point, so might as well just push back in your one little part of the world. Try to do good, even if you know that you are up against a hurricane or a Dracula.
I just want to say real quick. First of all, I thought those were the best elements of true horror when the kid gets it, and the flames and everything. It's all so shocking, but not shocking in a exploitative way. I thought it was horror, like true horror, where this movie is really like firing on all horror cylinders, and I don't mind adventure horror where everybody lives, but this was something else. I also really quickly, and I want to get us onto the characters, starting with Dracula himself, so that we can get to one of Mary's points about Salem's Lot. But I was just remembering, Drew, how much this community, meaning you guys and the extended group, how much you meant during the pandemic, when we were all stuck in our homes, and it was a really weird ass time, like a weird time, man. And that was
Horrifying, even.
This was a great
Did it feel, Jason, did it feel to you very like anytime I rewatch movies like The Thing or Alien or even The Last Voyage of the Demeter, it's like it to me is like referential to the pandemic, where it felt like we were the last voyage of the Demeter.
Yeah,
we
it
were
was like
roommate. It's very
like those people on the radio in the stand. Yes. Yes.
It feels very emotionally relevant. I would be so curious to see if other people felt that way, because it's like these movies hit such a specific chord for me nowadays since the pandemic, and I wonder if that changed for other people too.
This is
have
what
seen
I'm
a lot of
saying
people-
when I say that there is honor in being doomed. You guys just said it in more words, but better than what I meant, or better than what I said, because like that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like the world seldom makes sense anymore, and that is actually something that the Clemens character talks about a lot. And like it may sound like I'm waxing cynically, and I guess to a degree I am, but I find the idea of trying to do good in a otherwise mean, ugly world to be an incredibly empowering thing. And that's to me like
I
the
believe you.
core.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also was gonna say, now after what Drew said, now would be the time where if we wanted to add levity, we all sing. This is the point where we all sing a happy sea shanty to break that up.
I admire
But Drew,
Gen Z
no,
for
I
their
totally
attachment
agree
to
with
sea
you. I
shanties.
understand. And Mary, to your point, I think a lot of people have picked up on that. And I certainly for a while changed my viewing habits to maybe movies that didn't perhaps remind me of as much of that, just because like I did or did not want to connect with that. Over a period of time. Not to bury my head in the sand, but just like how you approach media and what you're putting in your brain, through your eyes and ears, all that is relevant to your experiences. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely something there. And I think a lot of us view what we watch in our experiences now like, oh, that's part of it. Right.
Yeah. In fact, I oscillate wildly between escape, pure escape, the same way that like Drew watches 1940s Universal, just like stuff that is just that you can sort of fall into, like you're falling down a well and into this stuff, and stuff that is more grim, that makes and actually, if you dive deep, they can bleed into one another. But
Sure.
all right. So I want to talk about the characters, but going in order of importance. I think it's we should talk about Clemens and we should talk about Dracula, and I think we should talk about Dracula first. Mary, go ahead and give us your thoughts.
Like that he wasn't he wasn't human, he was humanoid, he was more monster than man. That to me was something that was so exceptional about the Coppola version of Dracula, where the man versus monster was so blurred, and even the monster that was pretty demonstrably monster was still sexual and seductive in a way, even though he was this giant Batman. I mean, really, I like that this creature was more of a creature than anything else. And frankly, I think I remember when I was in my car, like scrolling through, being like, "How do they do this?" The creature design and the creature effects were fabulous, and I think almost all of them were practical. And I want to give a shout out to whoever was doing the practical effects for this, because there were some really, really, really slick blood gags in this that were ooey and gooey and gory and real. They weren't gratuitous, but they were scary. I thought they were really, really lovely. So that was my take on it. I thought it was Dracula wasn't debonair or anything like that. He was a monster through and through, and that was terrifying.
So by the way, it is mostly practical. They've got Javier Botet in this full body, takes a long time to put on suit. This guy he's just extremely skinny. He's like the Scarecrow, right? And he's wearing this full rat suit, and they had, like, for him climbing the mast, they built this really cool rig where the mast is lying sideways and he's sort of suspended and on a track that they then digitally remove. And so he just scurries along it, and it causes this illusion of him zipping up a pole, but it's believable because there's still weight as he pulls himself along. And
What a cool trick! Like those.
That's
like
great.
it's so cool. Like this is the fun part of movies to me, is watching something and being like, what the fuck? I know that's I know that that's not real, but it looks real. Like
It looks
having
great.
that in between of all of that, it's so exciting, and it's so fun when you see it again, like in contemporary film.
Well, and then they would paint, for what it's worth, they then digitally painted elements of his costume over him. So like they created a backwards second knee for him, and stuff like that, so that his legs looked weird. But did somebody say something? I'm sorry.
I did.
Yeah, go.
I wanted to backtrack to some of the stuff that Julia was hitting on about during her opening thoughts about the differences between this, with the exception of like Nosferatu, obviously, but the differences between this and your traditional Dracula, where he is, a suave guy in evening wear, and the Bela Lugosi Dracula, the Christopher Lee Dracula. Honestly, like the Dracula that we got in the Netflix series, and even the Nicolas Cage Dracula from Renfield is closer to that than this is. But I think there's, I don't want to second guess the film, what the filmmakers were trying to do. And, maybe this is just the stuff I've been watching kind of bleeding into each other. But I think for Dracula to be a figure of fear again, because we are so familiar with him, we're probably more familiar with Dracula than possibly any other horror character. Like, he is possibly the genre's biggest icon. So to make him scary again, I think the thought was probably to dial back all of the iconic elements to where it's Dracula in this movie in some ways is kind of like Godzilla, which is a strange thing to say, but he's something that you have to endure. He's not so much a character as he is like a hurricane or a tornado or something. Like, it's something the ship is going through, and like they have to try and pull together to try and survive it. And I think that's what makes the movie work. That being said, they implicitly state that this Dracula can be the traditional Dracula if he wants, because like the Anna character says that he can appear as a man, and even there's this whole business where he has this silver-tipped Wolfman cane.
Yes, wasn't that interesting?
Like, that he can be like the if he chooses to shapeshift into that, he can be that. But as Tony said,
good. That's what he said.
Well, I was just going to say, as Tony said during the opening thoughts, there's no need for that here. Like, he's just a storm. So
he can be. He's like, all right. I think other than the fact he's weak and has to actually like wait to feed and all of that, but once he's going, I think he's probably like, man, it's been a long time since I've been Dracula. This is where it's at. Like, I don't get to, normally I'm around society. Sometimes I get to go do this if I fly out of my castle.
I'm not
to the village
saying
below.
And I'm not saying to Julia's point, and you sounded like you had something you wanted to say towards that. Like, the sexy, seductive Dracula or vampire, all that stuff is fine. And, I think everybody on this podcast enjoys that to varying degrees, to one or the other. But I think this was like a choice that was made, that's not necessarily a criticism of what came before. It's just, because again, they do allude that he can be that if he wants. It's just, that's not the story that they were telling.
But yeah, what I was going to say was just the shape-shifting thing. They actually had an alternate opening, which involved him turning, that they find the ship and they find the captain dead, and then when they're on the ship, the wolf runs past them. So he turns into like full wolf. So he's like a full shapeshifter, not just a little bit. Like, you can do all of it. So it is a choice that they're like that he's making as a character to not be the human person. Go ahead, Mary.
That would have been a little bit of the thing too.
Well, and that's also the reference from the book, is that once they crash on the shores of England, like bystanders, like, we saw a wolf, a wolf-like creature get off the ship. It's like, it's a direct reference to the actual text, but I kind of like that they didn't make him sexy Dracula. Like, I love sexy Dracula, obviously. I think that's like a huge, that's why Dracula is so, I guess, foreboding and intimidating, because he's threatening to humans, specifically in a way that is very human, and interpersonal. I like that they have animalistic Dracula, because also animals are threats to humans. I don't know. It's just a different kind of threat that I think is really interesting.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Oh no, and I think that I like the spectrum of interpretations of Dracula that just exists generally, because I think it's one of the very few like, I guess, perennial characters of any genre that can be so many different things and also still be true to the spirit of the character. It's just it stood the test of time for a reason, and also it is so contemporary for a reason. And I just, this movie, I think, just it reinforced that for me in a big way.
One of the things I also particularly enjoyed about this movie, especially on my second viewing of it, is that there is no Van Helsing character here that's like lays down the rules of what a vampire is and isn't. So we as viewers know lots of things about Dracula, but none of the characters do other than the name. Like you know, that's as much information as we're given. So like none of the stuff that would help these people out, like they don't know about wooden stakes, they don't know about garlic, they don't know about holy water, they don't know about any of that shit. So they're just like flying blind. And there's something really Hitchcockian about that, because like it creates this sense of suspense where and it's been a really long time, I think, that I've watched a vampire movie where there hasn't been like the one character that suddenly starts spouting off the vampire rules. Like that never happens here.
That's true.
And it was really refreshing.
Yeah. Scott, go crazy.
All I was going to say is that taking a slight diversion is, the Dracula characters, certainly at least cinematically has been interpreted since 1927 or whenever Nosferatu came out, and there's all these different takes. And I would say within the community, one of the things that absolutely drives me insane about any character, even outside of horror, where people are like, oh, well, this one's clearly the best. And it's like, why can't you accept a character and take all these different interpretations and just accept them for what they are? It's like, you may have a personal favorite. I'm not saying that you can't, but why can't you accept the Bela Lugosi Dracula and the Christopher Lee Dracula, and all these different iterations of the same character, just like over the years, how many different people, granted the character is somewhat more straitjacketed, played James Bond. It's the same sort of thing. It's like, why can't you accept that? Anyway, that's me getting on my
No, I think you're
Apple
exactly
stand
right. I wish that we had a couple versions of this, in the same sense that we got two versions of Exorcist at the beginning. They literally made it twice. I would like to see a version with this rat Dracula, and I would like to see a version, because remember, Frank Langella's character did this scene.
Mhm.
And it was pretty good, but you never actually saw him physically. So I would like to see it with some Frank Langella type or some sexy Dracula. I would really like to have seen it.
So I think that the reason we don't have sexy Dracula on the ship is because he's gonna become something else when he meets up with everybody in England. But in here, he literally is a rat on the ship. There's rats on the ship, and he's one of them. He is feeding for survival. He's trying to get through this. He's been he's been traveling for weeks. He's just trying to get through this time because his goal is to reach England. So he's eating, first. There's a deleted scene where he's actually had not just Anna but two other people from her village that he was also feeding off of, that were in the hold in one of the boxes, and he had killed them. I'm really confused about why some people die and some people become vampires, but whatever. So that was one of those things that I was kind of bugged by. But so he had killed them, and then he was slowly killing Anna, I guess. And then he eats the animals. So it's basically just feeding for survival, and then he's going to get to London, and then he'll like spend all his energy to fit in, I think, is my idea.
Okay, I think that's a good point, because I think that's I agree that was 100% the interpretation for this movie. I think that's one of the big interpretations for the book. The one interpretation that I've seen of this specific part of the book that is sexy Dracula on the Demeter is the BBC version of Dracula.
Yeah.
Okay, we can finally talk about it. It's that I've seen that version probably 4 or 5 times. I saw it for the first time on a whim. It was during the pandemic, being like, well, whatever, I'll watch it, and I'm probably gonna hate it. And after the first episode, was like, like very taken aback. Was like, this is
You're talking
fabulous.
about the Netflix Dracula, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
technically the BBC Dracula, produced by the same people who did Sherlock.
Yeah.
Just fabulously done. Some of the best acting you'll see on television, full stop. But I think it's a 3-part miniseries. The third part is one that I think a lot of people had a lot of opinions about. It didn't go down well with a lot of people. I personally loved it. But I think the second episode was the strong point, the best part of the whole thing, because it was on the fucking Demeter. It was this movie.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
In a completely different context with sexy Dracula, and it was very it felt very contemporary. It felt very referential to the Jack Palance. It felt very referential to Christopher Lee and Hammer Horror. It was completely its own thing, where I think that Klaus Bang, who played Dracula, towed this line of debonair and animalistic that quite frankly I don't think I've ever seen any other person who has played Dracula do quite like him. And I think that this is a good balance of, or I guess this would be a really good comparison of the two. It would be really fun to watch that, and then to watch The Last Voyage of the Demeter, because Dracula was both that sort of rat that was infesting everything, or the creature that was eating everything, the stowaway, but also the very suave count who was making his way from Romania to England. It was just fabulous, and also had a really good. I mean, my favorite interpretation of Van Helsing is that version. Sister Agatha Van Helsing, just mwah, 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 like so good. It is so good. So, but I think that's the only other version of this part of the story that I've ever seen committed to film.
That version of Dracula is almost like a Cary Grant Dracula. Like he has a very old Hollywood.
He has a London accent, a London accent, and it's so clever and
we should do
ironic.
that for the podcast. Although, like, I am one of those people that has tremendous problems with the third episode, but the first
I would
two...
love to talk with you about that, Drew, because I think I hated it for the first time I saw it, and then I watched it again and I really liked it. But I also like how the accents were such a specific part of the story.
Yeah, for sure.
Which also shows the fucking range that Klaus Bang has as an actor, that he can just play with accents like he plays, like a cat plays with a fucking ball of yarn.
Yeah, no, you're right. Scott, you had something.
So I'm only aware of the just aforementioned BBC version, and then this film, and in the 1931 version with Bela Lugosi. Those are the only media versions that I'm aware that even reference or show the Demeter. Is that true as far as you know?
And Bella's 1979 has an extended sequence on the Demeter.
Okay, I'd just forgotten about that.
There's a very brief reference from, it's brief, maybe like 2 seconds, I think, in the Coppola version, but it's...
Yeah, and of course
Nosferatu has.
Yeah, I was just going to say, of course, Nosferatu. Yeah.
And that has the rats, which is echoed here with the vermin.
You also have Max Schreck like creeping around a ship and everything. And
a question, because I will admit, I'm a bad student, and I will get a letter C on my paper, which is so. If the ship is wrecked, wasn't one of the essential things about the trip too was that the soil had to be moved to Carfax Abbey. So do they salvage it, and that's how it eventually
In
gets
the
at
book,
Carfax
there
Abbey?
is a
Yeah.
lawyer that picks up the boxes.
Okay.
But I mean,
Well, that's
Isn't it?
That's one of the things
Isn't
that
that?
bugged me was the inconsistency that it seemed like they were going to sink it, and they actually did. I mean, I get that he got attacked before he could finish the job, but one of the guys actually does, axe a hole in the side of the ship, but it doesn't sink and it doesn't set on fire. It ends up just making it all the way to shore and then wrecking. So he's able to get his soil. So I
Yeah.
was like, well, why didn't?
Yeah.
And why didn't they kill him? Why
well,
didn't they
this
kill him when he
is
was awake?
Stoker's
When he was asleep?
Dracula. He's controlling the weather. So
Yes. Stoker, so I just wanted to point out several cool things about the wrecking of the Demeter in that book. It lands, and the London Times, I remember it being the Times, the newspaper, anyway, says, "Hey, get this. A boat crashed on at Whitby, and everybody's dead. People saw a dog run away. I'm not making this up. Perhaps the Humane Society can find it and take it into its care." They actually throw that in, which I think is the weirdest and most hilarious bit that the London Times is hoping the Humane Society will go take care of Dracula.
Well, it's such I think it lends such a specific realistic quality to the
Yes.
to the method of the story, where I think that I don't think that a lot of people who understand the Dracula story realize that the original written version was all written through letters, diaries, newspaper articles, etc., where it was very much like a true crime police drama sort of thing,
Yes.
a la the original version of Phantom of the Opera, the Gaston Leroux. Like, even if you read it in French, it's the same way. Where
I never read that. No, I'm.
It's a police drama. It was written same time period, I think same decade, as a police drama, and the two are so similar, I think, in quality and in a lot of very specific ways, or I guess a lot of literary ways. But I like that that's part of it, where the I guess the enigmatic quality of Dracula is more. I think that the reason why a lot of our perceptions of this film are the way they are is because of the zeitgeist of Dracula as a character, where I think that, like, if anyone knows what a chronotopic analysis of history is,
I can fairly
is
say
like
I do not.
I think this it's we should talk about it sometime. I think that someone should do a chronotopic analysis of everything that was produced about Dracula, because I think it'd be a really interesting thing, because I think that a lot of what is said about Dracula is not based on the original source material, but it's based on what people have created around the source material because of the source material.
Wow.
Which is it's such a cool concept, where it's something that has created many things, and now it's become something that is not what it was intended to be, but is a product of what other people have, of a unintentionally collaborative creation. Also, Dave should say something, because I'm gonna I'm gonna wax eloquent about chronotopic analyses until the cows come home.
No, those are really good points. I don't actually have a lot to add. I'll be honest. I'm just enjoying listening to what this whole crew has to say about the movie, and I really regret not having watched it again over the last couple days, because you are reminding me of bits and pieces of the movie that I really truly admired. Because I have to tell you this: when I walked out of the theater after having watched it, like 5-6 weeks ago, I'm not going to say I was underwhelmed, but I wanted something that was going to grab me the same way that Coppola's Dracula had. When I first saw that in the theater many, many years ago. But Scott and I will often say, and Mary will too, on our podcast, ask me tomorrow how I feel about something, and I'll give it a 9 out of 10 shot glass rating instead of 6 out of 10. As I've been preparing for this episode, I have been re-watching and rereading everything I can about the movie, and I apologize for not having just boned up by watching it again more recently.
Well, it's $20. I'm shocked at what it costs.
Therein lies the problem, folks. It sounds silly because $20 shouldn't be a game breaker.
Do you want to know why it's $20? Is because of exactly what we talked about. Is that it was a box office flop.
It's really unfortunate.
I don't understand. What does that mean?
Trying to make more money back.
I think that because
Oh.
knowing from my vast experience as a senior director of a museum now,
Uh-huh.
which is a joke. Um, I really think that what they probably have is at least what I would assume they have is when they go into when they release the film, they have a series of different, I guess, scenarios where
Mhm.
once they release the film, if they make a certain amount, then they release it for streaming on this date at this amount. And then there's like a matrix of descending order
Yeah, there's
there.
clearly
And that's
windows,
probably
right?
what
There's
Well, yeah, no, there's definitely windows, and the difference also is that this $20 buy now, as they often show it on like Apple TV and Amazon, is the analog to, yes, you can get it on Blu-ray, but physical media isn't seen in the same way, which is part of why there's a whole other discussion about the budgets, why there's so little risk taking, and why mid-range movies don't happen as much, and it's mainly because the guarantee of physical media is no longer part of that equation, or it's small. It's more boutique. So the $20 is the version of that, like, hey, well, we're streaming it as well. So you're more likely like, yeah, I'll watch it for $20 or I'll get some friends over and we'll stream it, right? So there is that window. And that's why you see like for a while it'll be like, it's brand new, $20. And then,
But
depending on the distribution, for a few weeks later, it'll be $6 or
That's right.
less. And then,
I
or
mean,
some things debut at $6 because they've decided like, well, we can make more money. It's more of a loss leader kind of thing. So go ahead, Mary.
I mean, I don't know the last time I saw something that was available for streaming for $20. Like that's where I'm like, where I want to see what the price comparisons are. And this is so pedantic.
Well, I
And
mean,
so
almost
like,
everything, when you see when you see the window, like almost every there's a whole section, you can see it on Amazon. There's a whole section that is new to I forgot what they call it, but it's basically new, and it'll say either buy or rent, or there'll be a buy. For a while, there's also a bunch of movies that'll be buy only. And again, I don't want to probably shouldn't go into the marketing of the stuff, but like the $19.99 price is that window that then goes down, and then it's usually that'll go down depending on how well it's selling at the $20 mark.
It was marked down during the week of Halloween, because when I bought this on Amazon, it was $6.99, and I would not have bought a streaming copy for anything more than that. Like if something is $19.99, I'm gonna buy a physical copy of it. For a streaming copy, like anything under $10, yeah, I'll do it. But like, it is amazing to me that they lowered the price, then jacked it back up. But I think Mary's probably correct that they're trying to cover the box office.
It's pretty standard though. I mean, the $19.99 thing will be for about a month usually, like anywhere from 2 weeks to a month when it's released brand new.
We don't notice it.
What I want to see is like, how does it compare to like Barbie? Like, I want to see what it compares to films that are released in similar times. Because I think like when I was younger, when a movie, and granted, I'm the baby of the group, I'm 31. When movies would come out on DVD, they would be available on DVD for like $20 to $25. Like the physical copy, the DVD, the thing, the two disc set, whatever. My expectation for a streaming copy is like, I paid $10 for each of the extended Lord of the Rings trilogy for streaming, the extended version, 3+ hours, whatever, for $20. Like that's
Well, if it makes you feel better, that is an answerable question, because I just looked up Barbie, and Barbie currently
good.
also not rentable yet, also $20 to buy. So maybe this is our new world.
Really? Is this a thing?
Maybe this is
the
or maybe to Tony's point.
That's what I'm saying. It's not. This is not new. This is like,
it's new
you
to
can
me.
go to Amazon right now and look at the rent or buy and home premiere sections, and you can see almost
Damn,
everything.
fucking inflation, man.
No, I mean it's well, it's been that way. I mean, again, it's not just inflation; it's the difference between how physical media. I know we're far afield, but I make my decision. There's I think we got Bill and Ted for $20 because we just wanted to see the new Bill and Ted. But yeah, it's been that way since for a really long time. In fact, some things will be some things, like I said, will be buy only for X amount of time.
Well, we were able to rent it from the red box, the old fashioned way for like $4 or whatever it is.
Oh, there you go. Anyway,
so can we can we get back on? I wanted to go back to the Dracula, the thing that I was saying that was annoyed me about another thing that annoyed me about this movie was that they, for some reason, they have this whole scene where they are wandering around. And I know we're going to talk about Clemens, so we can maybe be the transition to that.
Yes.
So Clemens and Anna are looking around in the cargo. By the way, Clemens is basically the Van Helsing here. It's like he doesn't have the rules, but he is the Van Helsing because he's kind of doing all the exploring and whatever. And so he and Anna are searching the cargo, and they find Dracula's home coffin, whatever. They figure out the fancy mechanism, which is, by the way, another reason why we know that Dracula is not just an animal, because he's got the super fancy mechanism to get in and out of his box. It's like Indiana Jones style. And they figure out how to open it, and they're like, okay, this is where he sleeps. And then nothing happens with that. So I'm like, why bother having that scene, or that at least that part of that scene, if they're not going to come back and try to kill him when he's asleep during the day? Why? They never even mentioned that. So that really.
But they don't know to do that.
No, they do, because they're like, he sleeps here, and they know that he's lurking around at night.
They know that there's 50 boxes of Earth. They don't necessarily know that he has to be in the Earth, because that's information.
No, but they said this is where he sleeps, and then they never come back when he should be sleeping because he's not active to try to kill him. I'm just saying nothing happens with it, and it just bothers me. It's a loose thread that
it is odd that they have and this is kind of a cheating that the script does, and I guess I can just live with it. But they know. I mean, because we're stuck with it, right? I mean, they know some things. They don't know. They don't know other things, and it doesn't bother me necessarily when I'm watching it. But you're right. When you think about it, they have some Romani wisdom about vampires, but not others. And
they don't really have much at all. Like, the only things that they know,
they didn't even try to come back to find him again later.
The only things they know about the sun is that they catch on fire, and they learn that by one of the crewmen who's been turned catching on fire. And even then, if they come across Dracula in one of those boxes, frankly,
that's true.
What are they going to do? Gang up on him?
It would have been a good scene, because they would have tried to kill him and they would have failed, but it would have been a good scene, because that would have been really, because obviously they're not going to kill Dracula on the Demeter because he has to make it to London. But it would have been interesting to have them find him during the day and then try to shoot him or stab him, and then he just wakes up and goes, "Oh, why are you disturbing my sleep? I'm going to kill you." Which
a scene we've seen many times in other films. Yeah. Go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, it is interesting that all of the activity that the crew or crew members try to do against this threat, and correct me if I'm wrong, is all at night. It seems like nothing is done during the day. They don't, they might. I do guess they do one of the searches initially during the day, but everything else is done at night, or when the sun is just going down.
They're not very good vampire hunters.
Yeah.
Again, though, I think some of that is deliberate, because they don't know. It's trial by error. The fact that they do keep trying to shoot him, we all know that's not going to do crap anyway. But
isn't that the mad, or the madness of this film, is that we know, because it's part of the part of the horror zeitgeist, where we're like, oh fuck, you're doing the wrong thing. We know this is not the way to kill him. Holy shit! But they don't, and so it's this weird, I don't think I've seen anything quite like this, where it's this bizarre, I guess, fluidity of the fourth wall, where I think the filmmakers knew that we would know that
Yeah,
that's
that's
not
true.
how that we know the vampire rules, as Julia put it. But the characters don't, and that's such an interesting concept to bring to a film, where the audience knows more going into the film point blank than the crew does,
I
Okay.
wonder
just
if they
because of the character themselves.
No, you're right.
I
Absolutely.
wonder if also they were afraid that a scene like that might be too close to the kind of let's all hunt the alien down with flamethrowers section of Alien. That's a possibility. Also, as humans, not knowing the things, there's an idea of, well, we're at a disadvantage in the dark, so other things are at a disadvantage in the dark, which is truly not the case here, right? There's a bunch of other animals as well, like, let's not
Well,
hunt
and they
big
do
cats in the
treat
dark.
him like an animal. Julia, just said that Clemens is sort of the Van Helsing, and I guess that's true. But in a lot of ways, he's the anti-Van Helsing because he never, basically, not until the end of the movie does he accept that there is something supernatural going on here. Like the whole time, he's like, "This is a beast. This is some kind of animal," and he's very, very, very rational. And, and if it was real life, he would be right. But because he's in a horror movie, he's out of his depth. Whereas Van Helsing, and I guess, this is sort of highlighting why Van Helsing is Dracula's ultimate nemesis, is because he uses science and, religion and folklore, and this sort of trifecta of, oh, I know how to destroy vampires. Y'all are also Van Helsing's crew is all like the London group of vampire hunters, because and I guess this is a good way to segue into talking about the Clemens character, but because there is both some classism and some racism going on here, these crewmen don't fully accept Clemens as one of their own, so they're not really listening to him the way, the vampire hunters in Dracula, the novel, listen to Van Helsing.
Wow, there's a lot there, because I couldn't tell you how real any of the racism in this film is or not, because I have no idea. And that's not an argument against what you said. It's just literally,
really, Jason, you don't know what it was like to be a black doctor in the Victorian era?
I don't know if that even existed. That's my point. It's discussed as though it's the 1950s, and he's just graduated from med school, but nobody will hire him. But I don't know. There might actually have been a whole lot of black doctors coming out of Cambridge.
I also know, at least I am pretty certain that, as far as vocations, that being sailors or being on shipboard doing shipboard work was something that was more readily available to African Americans.
Right, it would be pretty integrated.
Correct. And, like anything else, I'm sure that it would depend upon what the mix of the crew was and where you were, and all sorts of variables as to how bad you would have to put up with shit.
Yeah.
Sometimes you wouldn't have to put up with much. Other times you'd be constantly bombarded.
But there's another thing at play here, is that, because let's see, with the exception of the one sailor who hits him with some slurs, most of these guys don't seem to have a problem with him being black, but they do seem to have a problem that he's better educated than them. There is a lot of discussion of we're working men of the sea, you don't belong here, you're soft, you're from Cambridge, that kind of thing. So there's multiple layers to what's going on here. And to your point, Jason, I don't know how realistic it is one way or the other, but I don't care. I think it works in regards to the movie. Also, I think it's better that they address it in some way rather than to introduce those elements and never really, because like he's almost not on the ship. Like there's the guy
Yeah.
that they do hire, and he flips out when he sees all the coffin with the Dracula crest on it. He's like, "Outie," like I like the fact that, while it's not the whole movie, because, it would be a drag, if it was, a movie about like class warfare and racial politics in the Victorian era. Like, this is not that kind of movie. You can make a movie about that, sure, but we're here to watch a vampire movie. But I do think that it's the fact that it is in there as texture, and it sort of defines the way the relationships are, is interesting. And I think it makes Clemens an interesting character, because he has his whole thing, that's something I already brought up earlier, or he keeps saying, like, what I want out of the world is not financial. I want the world to make sense. I want the world to I want to be able to define the world. I want to be able to see a world that makes sense to me. And then he's thrown into this thing that absolutely does not make sense.
Yeah.
And I think he's a really interesting character. I am frustrated that he survives, because then I have questions as to, like, if this is Dracula, where is he during the rest of the book? Like, that's the only thing that bugs me the
Well,
most.
he's moving into Carfax Abbey, assuming that we're in the book.
Well,
It makes me wonder if the filmmakers were hoping this would be a way to segue into a sequel to this film had it been more successful.
Yeah.
I got the impression. Yeah,
somehow
I'm with
this
you.
character would have hooked up with Van Helsing in some way,
or even become this universe's Van Helsing.
Could be.
I've changed my name, and now I'm going to introduce myself. I got the impression that there was a chance that, should there be a sequel, or should it lead into a full-on Dracula movie that leads from this, that there was a chance they were positioning it as, I will be Van Helsing, at the very least inform Van Helsing. But I definitely think that was the idea that was kind of floated by the outro, So
yeah,
which is kind of neat,
Dracula.
because he is a great character, and really his performance is awesome.
He is a wonderful character. My son Kaz was commenting when we went to watch it, and he actually remembered a lot more of this movie than I did. Said that they seem to be in a 1980s movie. There would have been a romance between the Romani girl and the doctor, and he refers to stuff like this as straight baiting, when you have two characters who could be together but they just never do. And he goes, it's just there for the straights to hope that these two will get together, and they never do. And I thought that was brilliant. All right, so that's Clemens. Are there any other characters that we think we should point?
Well, Anna and the captain, obviously.
Well, so let's first.
And also the first mate.
Oh yes. Well, you know what? You're a big you got a big thing for David Desmalkian. What's that about? Like explain that to us.
What's that about, Mary?
He's like, I have like a deep affinity for character actors, and he's a character actor who I think embraces the role of a character actor in a big way. Also is a huge just a huge fan of the genre. He's a horror nerd just as much as we are, if not more.
And sci-fi too. He's in both DC and Marvel movies. So.
Yes, and I mean, he played Dot Man. He was in Dune. He was like, it's been a good couple years for David Desmalkian, and it was such a pleasure to see him as in a heroic role where he played like. I guess the last role that I saw him in really was as Dot Man, where he was kind of he was kind of a hero, but Peter DeVries in Dune. I like seeing him succeed. He just seems like a very lovely.
I kept.
He seems like such a lovely person, and I remember, I think that Drew sent us the picture of him with the little Dracula dirt necklace, and that kind of cemented it for me, where it was like, damn, Good for him. What a lovely guy. He like
I
he really he's committed. He's committed to this whole world for all of us.
Yeah.
I kept expecting him to go the Renfield route in this because he, like, the fact that he's like a hero and he's a hero through like he, especially the fact that he sort of, him and Clemens have like a back and forth that is not pleasant.
Yeah.
Like I really did expect him to go under Dracula's thrall and become you know, a bad guy. And you know, the fact that he's the guy that goes to start putting holes in the ship and everything, you know, that was a nice surprise. Also, like, is, you know, a little add on to what Mary was saying as to why he's such a likable guy. As much as I want to hate him for being a Hollywood guy that has gotten into the comic book industry, he is a tremendously good comic book writer. And you know, I'm having echoes of when Gerard Way started writing comics, and I wanted him to be bad at it, and you know, he wasn't. And the same thing has happened here. He's extremely good at writing comic books. So you know, yeah, you know, geek who has done well is, you know, there's something nice about that.
That's great. That's perfect. Julia, Anna, you were going to give us a little bit about the character of Anna.
Yeah, so she's really interesting because she is a Romani girl that has been brought by Dracula on the ship for him to be able to feed on until I guess he gets ready to kill everybody else. I'm not sure, but anyway, just one of her because he needs like a feed a night basically, but he's been feeding on her little by little, and so she has all these teeth marks all over her, and it's super gruesome. So it's really horrific. It's like basically a sex slave, except she's a blood slave or whatever. But she is able to, once they discover her and start giving her blood transfusions, she's able to survive for most of the film, and in fact, you know, help them understand what's going on. I really like this actor. I think her name is, I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's Aisling Franciosi, I guess. Anyway, she's really, really cool. I liked how she could portray both the very weak and a little bit kind of crazed character at first, and then she's like badass, like let's get to the bottom of this. And then at the end, she realizes that she has actually been like is turning, but she's able to catch it before she doesn't just turn. She's like, this is happening, and so I need to separate from, because now at this point the ship has they're away from the ship, she and Clemens, and so she ends up sacrificing. I mean, it's not, she had no choice, but she ends up separating from him to save him, which I thought was great. So I really liked her. I thought she was a very interesting, complicated character.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed her a lot, and I like that the film doesn't go places like, you know, you think about Alien 3, and the presence of Sigourney Weaver causes everybody to they literally try to sexually assault the character, and that's not happening here because I think we've just kind of lost interest in seeing those tropes play out. I think, you know, but and I'm glad for it, and also probably the reason we don't have this sort of you know, obligatory love scene between these characters is because there's no time. This thing is on rails, and there's just no time for these characters to slow down and like fall in love. But I'm telling you the truth. In the 80s, it would have happened no matter what, because that was just
Well,
how
also
movies work.
this is not that kind of. I mean, yeah, I guess Alien 3 is a genre movie, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like the racial and class tensions that are in this is like, well, it like
This
there's
is a more serious movie.
there's
Yeah.
tensions about there being a woman on the ship because there's the old superstitions about women on ships, and they play off of that, but it's just enough that it's there and there's tension, but they never get gratuitous about it. Yeah, that's nice because
It's great. They're doing different stuff. It's like Shonda Rhimes when she gives her talk on writing says, when you come up with the ideas for your story, the first things you think of are the things everybody else has done, and if you can figure it out, don't do those. Do something else. You know, and that's just such great advice. Like, okay, let's not have them try to sexually assault her. Let's not have the scenes we've always seen. Let's do something different. And I really do appreciate that it's fresh in
Because she's
those
already
terms.
being victimized by Dracula, so it would be horrible if
Right.
she was also
It would just be
victimized by the
really,
sailors.
yeah. It would derail what we're watching into something else.
Right.
Well,
Then
you
I,
could
yeah,
certainly take a grim movie and make it almost unbearably grim.
Yeah, I
in
agree
that-
with you.
in that
Yeah,
regard.
yeah. That's a really excellent way to put it. I feel like we should probably steer towards the
Well,
end.
shouldn't we talk about the captain? I mean, he
Liam
is the
Cunningham?
captain of the Demeter.
Yes. Hell of a voice, right?
Yes.
I have a question. Can anybody tell me if the captain in the original story does he have a name, or is he just simply referred to as a captain?
He is unnamed,
Okay, I thought that might be the case.
but I will.
He's probably
say-
Russian, right?
Yeah, I will say this. He's Irish here,
Right.
and I have never thought of this character as Irish. I've always pictured the character as Russian. I mean,
Yep.
the rest of his crew is all Eastern European,
Yeah.
so it is a bit strange that
Well,
they
and
have an
originally
Irish
they had
character.
He did a
cast Ben
fantastic job, but I
Kingsley.
would have preferred a Russian character myself.
Originally, they had cast Ben Kingsley, which would have been really interesting for that character.
Yeah, Ben
Oh.
Kingsley would have been good. Although I think, I'm fine with who we ended up with. He's got, as people would say, he's got a great face, and he's got
Yeah.
this like gigantic mustache that grows into his sideburns. And I remember when we watched when Jamie and I watched this movie for the first time on Halloween, I was like, this is probably how I'm going to look when I'm an old man. But like it's one of the things that I think that maybe held this movie back at the box office is you don't really have any like quote unquote movie star types. But I also think it's to the movie's advantage, because you do have an actor like this in the main role, which I think in a lot, if this was trying to be a bigger, more movie star centric kind of thing, that the thought would have been go younger, go sexier. But instead they got this guy that is 100%
Yeah.
believable.
But he also, I think, is pretty recognizable from Game of Thrones, where he also was playing someone like a seafaring person in Game of Thrones. He played the Onion Knight. I think he's a recognizable actor, and recognizable in the way that this character was recognizable. And yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting choice to me, but I remember seeing David Dastmalchian being put up as oh, he's in this movie, and then this guy's in this movie, and there's a couple other people in this movie. They're all really interesting choices, where even the woman who played Anna was in a couple of like survivalist movies, like historical survivalist movies. So I don't want to say typecast, but I think at least for the captain, kind of typecast.
Yeah, but it works. Like he,
Yes, agreed,
he,
completely.
He has a veteran sailor vibe, and I also like, this is the sort of cast you want for a gothic horror movie. Like when you think about the way Hammer cast their monster movies, they had their sort of glamorous, bosomy bombshell type actresses for certain roles, but they also, you had your Michael Rippers, and
I was gonna say Michael Ripper.
yeah,
Yes.
like you could see Michael Ripper playing this part.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And what's the guy named Michael Gow, who played Harker, who would always show up in minor roles?
Michael Goff.
Yes. Yeah.
I just watched Abominable Snowman, the Hammer Abominable Snowman. You could also see Forrest Tucker playing this character. Like there's a lot of old, Hammer actors that I could see like slotted into this movie and working pretty well in these parts. And I love it about this movie. Like
It,
it's one of the reasons why I'm gonna probably go back and watch it a
it would
lot.
be interesting to play that parlor game, and I'm not suggesting we do, but to retroactively cast this movie as a Hammer film,
Yes.
and think of it as how it would have been different if it had been done by Hammer.
Oddly, I would cast Peter Cushing as Dracula because he got pretty gaunt there towards the end of his life.
It would be a hell of a lot cheaper. That's the I mean
Yes,
Hammer
absolutely.
Hammer those were expensive movies for horror movies, but they weren't I can't understand why Universal just broke the bank on this. I just don't understand. Like it makes no I mean, it looks beautiful, but you could have had it look 75% of this or 50% of this and we still like if you think of Queen of Blood by Roger Corman, that set is really just like two rooms that you just keep going back and forth in. Here, he's built like, a set the size of like a football field that people can run through these crates and do all this stuff. And it's wonderful, but it's an embarrassment of riches. It's not necessary, I feel.
But that's the sort of stuff that's going to make this a cult classic.
I agree with you. That's a very, very good point. Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And also, if he were listening to this conversation right now, he'd be like, "What do you know? I mean, like, I can make as big a set as I want. Like, that's true. It's truly, I'm not signing off on this.
On that note though, it's so hard in Hollywood, it seems to be is very risk averse for many reasons, possibly because this is a movie that didn't do as well as they thought. But the fact that they gave it the budget that they did for a horror film, I mean, that's pretty cool. It's part of what makes it so frustrating when something that you really dig doesn't make as much money.
Yeah.
Or isn't as big as you might want it, because those times when it stands to be a negative, well, I guess we won't do that again.
Right, and so you'll see less of them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for many, but there's not just one reason why that would be. However, in a risk averse arena, it's painful when you see something like this not do as well. Maybe not to go back to that, but maybe enough people will buy it, will rent it for $20,
yeah,
and it'll see a resurgence, or buy the Blu-ray, which is my preferred way, because you usually get extras and such. But yeah, we can hope. Dread, for example, did terribly and was marketed poorly, to the point where the filmmakers seemed, when I saw Q&A, seemed to be very sad. They kind of knew. I didn't notice until later and put two and two together and was like, oh yeah, I see. But it did really well on home video because people saw, oh, that's what that was.
Yeah.
Because of that. So we can hope that more people watch this movie and go, oh yeah, this is the good stuff.
Well, it does happen from time to time that something comes out, that came out 3 years ago or whatever. It makes its way to Netflix. Algorithmically, it shows up, and suddenly everybody loves it, and it causes. I mean, that happens. That actually does occur. I guarantee you, nobody hopes for it. What they hope for is
right
that it's a big hit and they get more jobs right now.
Yeah.
But
it's nice. I mean, it's nice when it's you'll see at multiple horror conventions, etc. You'll see where people go, or just different, media things where people go, oh, this movie became a cult classic. And I love the fact that people found its way.
Yeah.
But in the immediacy of things, when you need to get hired and you need to pay bills, it's a lot better when it's a success right off the bat.
Money
right?
is better. Yes.
And then then you get to make more movies in this case. Right, or
Yeah.
whatever you do. So it's better. It's nice when people recognize, oh wow, I had no idea this was as good as it was. But in the reality, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good when it's recognized financially, because that's how we vote.
Also, sometimes
everything in this world.
I mean, sometimes shit happens. I mean, you just make
Sure.
I mean, the crazy thing is, like, I disagree with how Dracula's presented here. I wish he were, like Julia said, sexy Dracula. But you know what? You can do everything right, and still fail. That's the astonishing thing. You can hit every note, and somehow, just by dint of bad stars, who knows, randomly, you can fail. And that's where we as fans we don't really care, because you'll come across something, you'll go back to it 7 years from now, and that's all that matters, is that it's
I
art.
mean,
The art exists now.
I'll be interested, to the sexy Dracula thing again. I'll be interested because I'm blanking on the director's name now, but the guy that made The Witch and The Lighthouse
Ari
is
Aster?
he's doing a version, his own Dracula movie. He's doing a version of Nosferatu
No
that's coming
kidding.
out.
It's
Yeah,
what's his name?
Isn't it
It's not
Eggers?
it's not Ari
No,
Aster.
it's
Oh, I'm
Eggers.
sorry. I
Robert
apologize.
Eggers.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so
It's
sorry.
Eggers.
But they were both popular at the same time. But yeah, he's doing a remake of the like OG Max Schreck Nosferatu.
With William Dafoe again playing Nosferatu, but
No, it's I think Willem Dafoe is in it, but it's what's his name who played Pennywise?
Really? Huh.
Yeah,
Well-
where it's so I think it's going to be kind of a mashup of the original Nosferatu and then the what's his name? German.
Oh, yeah, the Werner Herzog.
Thank you, the Werner
I've got a
Herzog.
poster right here of it. Yes.
Yeah, of his Nosferatu.
I'll
But it's
be
gonna
interested to see because because both this and Renfield didn't do well at the box office, and then we had the Invitation like a year or so back that also didn't do
but
well.
that wasn't good.
I liked it, but that's a whole other topic.
And I think, frankly,
I'm
that
just gonna be interested because we've had all this Dracula stuff, like the BBC Dracula and the Castlevania cartoon, and like there's all this Dracula stuff, and then I start to see these think pieces where they're like, oh, Dracula doesn't connect with people anymore as a character, and so I'll be interested to see if the version of Nosferatu that is coming out. If that does well, there's going to be a lot of internet hipsters eating.
I can't imagine.
I can't say crow. I'll say they're eating bat.
I think that
That whole thing.
Well, okay, what's his name? It's
Bill Skarsgård.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Bill Skarsgård. Yeah, the guy who played Pennywise, who has such a a good actor, is one of those people who can do the body horror. Like he's such a fabulous character actor, and what a role for him. And then Johnny Depp's daughter, Lily Rose Depp,
Yeah.
is also starring. I think it's gonna be fucking cool.
I mean,
but
I'm sure it will be. I can't imagine. I just don't have that much faith in Americans that they will take an interest in that. It sounds like
No,
Yeah.
honestly,
I think that
you're right.
So Willem Dafoe is playing Van Helsing.
That's what it is.
This is
okay.
going to be interesting.
Is
I
it-
just
Does this make you excited?
yeah. See, I would say that Bill Skarsgård and Willem Dafoe. I mean, Willem Dafoe was just a legitimate movie star, but I would say he has a certain, horror fans like him. But Bill Skarsgård is a horror movie star, like because of Pennywise. Like he is a genre icon now.
He could go to bat with Tim Curry, which is
Yeah.
hard to do.
Yeah.
Because
like
his Pennywise was like Tim Curry's was campy. His was terrifying, like actually really, really fucking scary. Not because of the costumes or the makeup or the this or the that. Like he was really fucking scary.
I am especially now knowing that they have somebody that has essentially played Dracula playing Van Helsing, which is fascinating to me. I am really curious to see if people will turn out to this because like I don't believe that people will not connect with Dracula as a character or concept. I just think it's like things are a mixture of marketing, things are a mixture of timing, and as we've seen, more often than not, like the moment, like the moment Renfield went up on Peacock, there were dozens of people saying, oh, that was pretty good, like why did nobody go see that? And it was like, I don't know, why didn't you go see that? Same thing with this thing. I guarantee you when Demeter drops down to a reasonable price on Amazon, you will have a bunch of people going, oh yeah, that was pretty good. Why didn't more people go see that? So it's really just, I think, this sort of, I don't know why there's all this like Dracula stuff in the air. Like, I think, people are thinking about Dracula as a character a lot, but so I think the right movie will be a hit, and maybe it'll be the new version of Nosferatu. I certainly has a lot of intriguing elements in it. Now that
Has
it has Nicholas Hoult in it.
Yes, and there has
Holy
there's a
crap.
bunch of people who are in this movie. Here's what I think is going to be really interesting. So there's a couple of interesting pieces that I should find, like peer-reviewed articles about how monster films correspond to the like social zeitgeist, and how a lot of vampire films become popular when there are times of pandemic, plague, whatever, like transmittable illnesses. And there are these kind of like specific markers of popularity that correspond to social realities that I think is really interesting. But I wonder if that's part of this.
Oh, because I said, I don't think it's any accident that we've had all this Dracula media. It's just strange to me that none of them have connected. But what's interesting to me about it, and I guess this can segue into my final thoughts if that's what we're going to. What I think is interesting about the two 2023 versions of Dracula is that they both have this undercurrent of abuse to them. And I think that there's kind of an honesty there, because I was just rewatching the Coppola Dracula today, which is, one of the, archetypical quote unquote sexy Dracula movies. But like when you watch that movie with an adult lens, Gary Oldman's Dracula is a creep. Like, he's super rapey. He's he's mesmerizing, and I guess he looks better with his shirt off than the Dracula in this movie. But like,
Dracula's always a creep. He's always super
Dracula
creepy.
is a creep, and I think we're finally
Yeah.
being finally being more honest about that. And what worked for me about this movie is that it really just stripped all the way back on that. And that the idea of when Dracula is being attractive, it's kind of a con anyway. Like, he's using it, he's like a pitcher plant. He's getting you in close enough so he can eat you. And I don't know, that this movie just worked for me. Like, I think this is going to be this is going to be a movie that I go back to over and over again, because it just clicks for me. I'm glad that I did get a copy that when it was marked down, because that digital copy I will probably watch enough, and at some point I'll probably pony up for a Blu-ray, because I really do like this movie, and I'm happy that we got to discuss it with all of our friends. Happy Draxgiving, everybody.
Yeah, no kidding.
Mazel.
It's like a Thanksgiving blood feast.
As we turn towards our final thoughts, let's go a little bit out of order, because I know that Scott wanted to say something. So, Scott, why don't you throw that at us, and also segue into your final thoughts.
All I was going to say, as far as the whole Nosferatu, the new film, I think that from a marketing point of view, now I may be wrong, and of course, you can dump a bunch of money in it, but I think that it's much harder to market a Nosferatu film than a Dracula film.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's that general awareness of who even Nosferatu is. Some people might know, oh, there's creepy photos from, a silent version of some vampire movie. But so I mean, and obviously it has a good cast, and depending upon how they market it, it could be really great. But on the other hand, I think if you're just taking it by virtue of character name, most people, I suspect, don't even know who Nosferatu is, or they know it means something creepy.
I think it depends if they play up the Dracula connection or
Oh
not.
yeah. I get it. I mean, I agree with you, but I just think if you were just to say, who do you think you'll sell more tickets to if you've got the name Dracula or Nosferatu?
The
And
big
it'd be like,
swing. I mean,
yeah,
I
I'd be like, I pick Dracula every time. So anyway,
yeah.
I will
I
say that I think even non-horror people at this point know the word Nosferatu means vampire.
Having said that, if I were an executive involved in it, I would say I think you should seriously consider calling it Dracula : Nosferatu, just to to just be absolutely certain.
Oh, I 100% agree with you there, but I think that Nosferatu doesn't have the question mark next to it that Last Voyage of the Demeter does.
Well, that's probably true.
Or that Renfield does. Like, I think there's enough vampire stuff around that people know that, oh, Nosferatu, this is a vampire movie. I know what I'm going to get to see when I go see this movie.
Well said. But Scott, your final thoughts.
I think that as we've already discussed, that if not in a general sense, but certainly amongst the community and people who enjoy this type of film, that it's going to become much more popular than it was when it was first released. I think that it's well made, as we've said, and it's got a good cast, and there really aren't any flaws in it. So it is a niche film, I think. So it'll never be like a huge film, but I think there will always be a group of people who will advocate for it, and and I think that it should probably become more popular over time. It might be one of those sorts of I don't know, obscure films that people go, oh, but have you ever seen this? And they'd be like, no, I've never heard of that. And then you show it to somebody and they go, oh yeah, this is great.
Or that horror fans just know. Like
Yeah,
we all
yeah,
go, oh, of course you've seen Don't Look Now, right?
yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much. Mary, and we'll come back, by the way, for endorsements. So you are not excused. Mary, what are your thoughts?
I really enjoyed this movie. This was a very a very rare glimpse into I think what the universal reimagination of the monster movies could be. This is what I wanted to be as part of the reinvigoration of that, a la The Mummy and other films like that. The cast was fabulous. I think the approach was really good. I really liked the title. I think it was kind of mismarketed, but I wouldn't have changed the title for anything, to be totally honest, because I think that it's so foreboding and so accurate. Where it's the last voyage of the Demeter, you know that everyone's gonna die, or that you assume everyone's gonna die. There's this assumption of doom, I suppose. And I really think that it was well paced. It was beautifully done. It I think was extremely true to the source material in a way that I don't think that they got enough credit for. And I guess it doesn't really surprise me that it wasn't really a box office hit, but I really do think that this is going to be one of the cult classics 5-10 years from now. Just like The Mummy was, or just like Jennifer's Body. So no, I loved it. I thought it was really, really wonderful. And I think that seeing it in the theaters, or seeing it in a drive-in was really the way to go. It was really exciting and magical. And yeah, I loved it. 10 out of 10. Maybe not 10 out of 10, like 8 out of 10, but solid enough. I think that anyone who's interested in Dracula should go see it.
Thank you also for reminding us of the 2020 BBC Mark Gatiss Dracula that covered this. Episode 2 covered
Gatiss,
this.
as I think might be pronounced as, according to
which I really do think that that might be the only other version of Dracula that's been committed to film that shows the voyage of the Demeter. And it's completely different from this one, but I really want to go back and sort of watch both of them in context to one another to see the similarities and differences, because it's
well, again, there's a good scene in the 1979 that you should check out, that in the Langella, because it has a lot of the big storm at sea. For what it's worth, when this thing was on stage, Dracula on stage, the wreck of a ship was a huge part of the marketing, because anytime you had a play that involved a shipwreck, people just would go because that was like because people have always loved spectacle, and so a bunch of actors on a stage with wind blowing and people throwing buckets of water, that has been something that brings in the crowds since then and is still true. So the shipwreck was always a part of the stage play. Okay. Although they didn't have scenes on it. All right. Who do we go to next? Tony. What about you?
Yeah, I really like the movie. I was lucky enough to see it right as it was leaving theaters. I think it left a couple days later. I was sad that it was leaving so soon because I think maybe it would have had a 2 or 3 week longer tail, maybe a month, that kind of could have picked up some more momentum. I think it's got a lot of great performances. I think there's some extremely. We didn't even get to some of the really suspenseful bits, like the bit in the fog where they're trying to leave the ship and stuff like that. I mean, there's just horrific and nail biting kind of stuff that I thought was really effective. Like I said, I was also I'd heard about the project in various incarnations off and on, or people trying to launch, even if it wasn't this directly, it's this kind of thing being launched for a long time. So it was cool to see it. I do think it's a worthy Dracula movie. Again, great performances. I will definitely shill for this movie anytime it comes up because I think it's got a lot going for it. Maybe it's not perfect, but I think what is, right?
Absolutely. Wow, how well said. That's so nice. Like, and it's a callback to Stephen King. Jesus, who does, right? That's wonderful. Julia, you started out saying not bad, but I prefer a sexy Dracula. And what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, as we were talking, I remembered a few of the things I didn't like about it. So I still don't love it. I think it's really well done. It's just like I said, I really I really didn't like that the kid gets killed. The kid actor was great, by the way. We didn't really talk about him that much, but he was fantastic, a neat character. Hated that he got killed. I mean the dog. I knew the dog was going to get killed because that just made sense. But I really was surprised that the kid got killed. So, but stuff like that. It was just those choices, and then a few of the inconsistencies I pointed out. So for me, it's not my favorite, but I do see why you guys love it. I like. There's a lot that I liked about it. I thought there was a lot of. It was really, really well done. I mean, it's just a really well done picture. So yeah. So I think it's been a really interesting conversation, and it's been so fun to be with our friends again. I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
yeah, for real. Uh, David, that brings us to you, Monsieur.
Sure.
What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I just have to sort of what's the word? Retcon? No, that's not the right word. I need to clarify. When I said that I left the theater feeling a little underwhelmed, that's perhaps a bit strong because as I reconsider so much of this movie, first of all, I intend to buy it on Blu-ray probably this week. So I obviously liked it. And as I think back, there was a scene in particular that was a total winner for me. And I know we didn't necessarily bring it up, but it's a scene where I believe the characters can see through the split in the captain's door. They get a glimpse of Dracula standing there.
Yes.
And that to me was just, purely nightmarish. So I would, great performances, gripping, no pun intended, with atmosphere, and I would say by our rating system, 8 out of 10 shot glasses.
Excellent. Excellent. Gosh, did we? Is that just leaves me? I'm closer to Julia's feeling on this than you guys. I technically loved this movie, but this was not my favorite Dracula, and but which is why I said I really wish that I had multiple versions of it. And then Mary
But
pointed
don't you
out
see that it
there are.
doesn't have to be your favorite?
Right.
Like it's
That is
just
absolutely correct.
creative choices.
It just can go up on my shelf just like Blood of Dracula, which is right over my shoulder with the poster. So absolutely, it's occurring to me also that one of the things that's making me dissatisfied with Dracula lately is that when Dracula was written, it was a very cutting edge, contemporary, almost science fiction-y kind of story. And Stoker wanted to talk about men and women and where they were going and sexuality and racism and all kinds of stuff from his particular late 19th century Irish point of view, and I think I've seen enough of Dracula in the 19th century. I kind of feel like if we're going to do this, it needs to be contemporary. I really kind of feel like it needs to be that this is supposed to be speaking to us as humans, and the more we get wrapped up in seeing it look like Sherlock Holmes, the less we can connect it personally. But that's just a theory. I don't even know for sure if I'm right about that. But yes. And
I'd
Mary
say
points out, yeah, go ahead.
I'd be willing to throw money at a completely contemporarily set Dracula film, not a vampire film, because there have been contemporary vampire films, but I'd go for a contemporary set Dracula.
There's
Just
probably
My
many.
my hashtag, or not hashtag, but my addendum to that is they would have, because everybody thinks of the Universal monsters as being Victorian, but technically they are contemporary. They're just an alternate
That's true.
contemporary.
Yeah.
So my addition to that is I think you can make that work in a way that's not hokey, like Dracula AD from Hammer is it's fun, but it's kind of hokey. I think you have to have a way to keep that atmosphere, which is what I want. When I have these characters, like, because like here's my thing. I'm over long hair Dracula. I want, like, I don't want Dracula to look like a metal singer. I want Dracula to, like,
Dracula with a fucking coif and
like Dracula from the Dracula 2000. Like I'm over that. Like I want, a more like I'm actually at the point, like one of the reasons why I was so elated with Nicolas Cage in Renfield is he wore a fucking cape, man. So like if
really,
you could have,
so sorry to interrupt. I think that his Dracula was so. I appreciate Nicolas Cage's dedication. I think perhaps unself-aware, like in a way that's pretty unself-aware. But I appreciate his dedication to camp, and that's exactly what his portrayal of Dracula was. It was fun. It had a stiff collar. The outside of the cape was a different color from the inside of the cape. There was black and there was red.
Like if we're gonna do Dracula, like I either give me this where it's like a monster, or give me Dracula that is somehow connected to Bela Lugosi and Christopher Lee, and
give me blood dripping fangs, or give me death.
Yeah, like I want that. Like if we're gonna do this, so if you're gonna do Dracula contemporary, I want it to be enough of an alternate reality that it can still have the gothic trappings. Like I want Dracula in fucking evening wear.
You can do that.
I'm sorry.
You can easily do that, because Dracula could be Succession easily.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that the contemporary Dracula, because if you want to go off of Universal, the contemporary Dracula would probably move around in business or political circles in the same way that high society. Lugosi was high society. So in our, I mean, he's probably going to be more like a politician or CEO,
businessman.
I hate to say it, but I feel like Elon Musk is a modern day Dracula.
He's not charming.
No, I don't even know.
He's not.
No,
I mean he did drain the life out of Twitter.
It's not as smooth or
I
suave
think it's a hot take. Well, because Dracula
it is hot. Yeah.
Dracula is supposed to be menacing and charming and able to worm his way up through the highest bits of society. He's charming, he's not likable. And that's a difference.
I don't.
I think there is something to what you're saying, though.
He's not smooth at all.
I think there is something to what Jason is saying, though. I think that there is that movie, and look, even a completely contemporary Dracula that doesn't have the stuff I'm talking about, it might still be a good movie. Like I'm just talking about, just like how Julia and Jason are saying that the critter in this movie isn't their mind's eye version of Dracula. Like we all have that, and So there's just creative choices. So there could be, that version of Dracula that to be made, and it could be really great. Just like how like the Invisible Man movie that they just did, I thought that was a really good movie.
Oh my God, that was great. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was completely contemporary. So, and not gothic at all, frankly. But yeah. Should we do endorsements?
We absolutely should. But I love this idea of coming up with new Draculas. That sounds like a blast.
The Legion of Draculas.
Yes. Just like the Council of Kangs, right?
Yes.
How there's just a bunch of Draculas around a table. You know, they would Nosferatu would be the one who like they all are slightly embarrassed by, because it's like, wait, did somebody eat the goddamn cat again?
This should be on What We Do in the Shadows, actually.
true.
Like the Council of Draculas would be a great thing for What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes, yeah.
I'd
Taika
watch it.
Waititi, if you are listening to this, you have our permission.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, endorsements. And we start once again with you, Mr. Drew. What do you got?
So unrelated to Dracula at all, but also a period piece. I have been really enjoying Lawman Bass Reeves on Paramount. The Lone Ranger was real and he was black. This is the true story of the real life guy that was the inspiration for the Lone Ranger, and also the first black U.S. Marshal. So
Yeah, I heard about this.
a fascinating historical figure that should be more famous than he is. So I'm hoping that more people will tune in on this, but it's really well acted, really well shot. Apparently it's got some of the same producers as Yellowstone, but don't make that turn you off from it. It's actually really good. And I don't know, just I've really been digging it. Selfish promotion. Next Saturday, Flamingo Cantina, Austin, Texas, Punk versus Rockabilly 11. Can you believe it? I've done 11 of these. Got a really great lineup on both sides. Digger of Dirt, Live Another Day, Prom Threat. That's all the punk bands. I have Rockin' Lloyd Trip, the Smoke and Burnouts, and Jamie's new band, Jamie Barr and the Bad Decisions. This is their debut show. So if you enjoy Jamie on the show, enjoy her live. Again, she's fronting a band for the first, she's been playing bass in a lot of different bands for a few years now, but she's back as the front person where she should have never left, because she's got the best damn singing voice below the Mason-Dixon line, maybe in the entire United States. So come out. It's free to the public, but it's also we're going to be raising some money for Girls Rock Austin. So come out, have a good time, pick a side, see who wins.
That sounds great.
Mic drop.
Yeah. Mary, what do you got?
A many thing. Okay, so I think as far as endorsements go, the one big one that or I guess I have two big ones to endorse. First one is the Mike Flanagan version of The Fall of the House of Usher. I think it's just called The House of Usher on Netflix. An interpretation of many of Poe's works, stories, poems, etc. It is not what I thought it was going to be at all, and I'm so glad for that. I enjoyed it immensely. It was fabulous. It was gripping. It was clever. It was funny. It was sad. It was just, and I think I told you both, or I told everybody here in our various group chats, every single actor was just gobbling the scenery. But I think the two standouts were Carla Gugino, who played, I think, a very interesting amorphous character. And if she doesn't get an Emmy, then there's something wrong with the world. And Mark Hamill, who was bizarre and interesting and lovely, and was such a delight to see in this kind of role. So I really enjoyed this one. And then the other one that I have been really enjoying was another miniseries called Bodies, British series that I found on Netflix randomly, and turned it on again on a whim, and really enjoyed it. It sort of dances this line between horror and sci-fi and is eminently watchable. That has some fun sort of historical through lines and some really tender moments. So I really highly recommend both of those. So Bodies and The House of Usher.
Wonderful, thank you. Tony, what do you have to recommend?
But just before this, I got back from Marvels and I really enjoyed it and I had fun. By no means am I telling you you should absolutely have to, that you don't like fun if you don't see this, but I don't quite understand. I don't quite understand the backlash because I thought it was hella fun. So, that's just me. You should definitely like what you like, but I think if you dig fun action superhero stuff, this was good in my opinion. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I haven't watched a ton of new stuff lately, but I think I said last time, I'm kind of back on my just find random things on Amazon, like where things get for. I just like those rabbit holes. So I've been watching a lot of just random B-movie sci-fi.
Love it.
And if you want by the way, if you want the flavor of this movie in a song, I am going to recommend to you Bear Away by Murder City Devils, which is sort of loosely has the lyrics and feel of this movie. So I've always thought about it since I first heard it, that it kind of gives me the feel of the Demeter. So I don't have a lot of recommendations this week other than, go dig on something that you like. And don't believe the hype on that. Like, again, which kind of ties into this, like the movie that didn't do as well, but hopefully it gains its footing. I'm there with there's gems out there. Anybody who tells you like rock and roll is dead or vampires are dead or another zombie movie or another Dracula, there's always room for something good. So it's up to maybe sometimes you have to dig a little bit, but there's stuff out there. There's stuff from all over the world that we can stream now. So if you're saying that there's nothing good anymore, I think that's on you for not looking. Not everybody has time to dig, and I get that, but it's out there, trust me.
People can be awfully lazy.
I fall into that category more often than I prefer, but there you go.
I do not think you're the least lazy person I know, but
I'm glad that you think that, but that's patently untrue, and I bet Rain can tell you. All right, I do try.
Thank you, though. Those are good words. Scott, what do you have to endorse?
I'm going to restrict myself to just one film, and it's a film that I saw originally when it was in the theaters back in 1981 that I had not seen since then, and I was a big fan of this film when I saw it originally. And it's 1981's Outland.
Holy shit! Oh my god!
Yeah, I have that on Blu-ray, and it's
all-time favorite movies.
For those who don't know, it's a film with Sean Connery where he plays a federal marshal on one of the moons of Jupiter, which is there's a mining operation there, and he's trying to bust basically a drug ring with some kind of future drug, a hallucinogen, and I thought it was an excellent film, and I was happy that when I watched it, it was every bit as good as I remembered, because sometimes that isn't true. And it didn't do well at the box office originally, and I don't know how many people really know about it aside from people of my generation, and even they might not. So if you haven't seen it and you want something a bit different, I'd recommend that.
It's High Noon in Space.
Yes,
pretty much,
exactly.
And it would fit in really well. We talked a lot about Alien. It could
there's
easily
sort of
take place
aesthetic
in the world of Alien. Like it has
Yep.
a really similar aesthetic, really similar kind of feel as far as flow. It's funny. Just before this, somebody was posting about it on Twitter. I just saw the poster again, but I revisit that Blu-ray. A decent amount because it's still really good.
there are some films from that period that I hesitate to watch or I won't watch because they don't hold up. They're still I still enjoy them, but they don't hold up in one aspect or another, or maybe couple. And when I went back to watch this, I was like, well, I hope this holds up. And this one holds up in every area as far as I'm concerned. It's there's nothing about it that was less than what I remembered. So it's very good.
Sadly,
mean-
none of our views of corporations have changed since this movie.
Yes.
I
Yes.
feel
It's
sad.
both the future and past and present all rolled into one.
I mean, I've left Twitter and I feel sad because I talked about Outland a lot on Twitter, and I'm hoping someday that Musk will sell Twitter and I can go back to it.
That wouldn't that be nice? Yes.
I was just remembering that I've tweeted about this many times that Frances Sternhagen in Outland is such a kick-ass character. She's a middle-aged action lady, perfect foil for Sean Connery. She's just a wonderful character, and she feels like something like that you didn't see in any other movies really for the last
absolutely.
then or since. I mean, she's
Yep.
really amazing, and
Yeah.
I loved her in that. Yeah, thank you for mentioning Outland. That
Absolutely.
was great. Yeah. Killer score too.
Yep. Yep.
You know, the great thing about movies that came out like 80, 81, 82, that's so goddamn long ago that it doesn't even matter if it was a hit because they're all forgotten. Everything.
Yes.
You know what
Yes.
survives? E.T. That's it. Everything else is gone. You know.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's not
Do
necessarily
not
true.
disrespect the greatest movie ever made, fucking
Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Ghostbusters. I know you just didn't do that.
Ghostbusters. Yeah.
Oh, Ghostbusters, of course. Yes, sure. There are a few movies that have, you know, but like if you look at that,
Even Martin Scorsese would agree with me that Ghostbusters is peak cinema.
I'm not saying they weren't. I'm saying I love all that stuff, but nobody remembers anything except for like the top 30.
Okay, you're gonna keep digging that hole, so you may as well just stop while you're here.
It's no hole.
Just say,
It is a hole there. So
just
many
say
movies.
that Ghostbusters is the best movie ever made, Drew. I
Ghostbusters
accept
is an
this.
excellent film.
And
The
whatever other
best
movies
movie
everybody else on the
ever
podcast
made.
also loves.
There's obviously no debate there.
All right.
Ride or die, baby.
So, I can't wait for us to discuss the new Ghostbusters. Julia, we just heard from you, and I would love to hear what you have to endorse. What do you got going on?
I'm gonna echo Tony on the Marvels. I loved it. I thought it was really fun. I thought there were some very memorable scenes that were really different. It's the Iman Vellani who plays Ms. Marvel is just so fun and adorable, and her family's great, and the Flurkins are great, and Nick Fury's great. Everything. It's just a lot of fun. And then also there's a book, and I think particularly David, you probably would like it if you haven't already picked up. Prequel by Rachel Maddow is about the fascist movement, the Nazi movement in the United States during World War II. Like there was actually like Congress people who were involved trying to get the Nazi movement going in the United States. Really interesting book. And we're going to go see her. We were supposed to see her the week before last, but she got COVID. So we're going to go see her this Thursday in Boulder for her book tour.
That's
Oh,
right.
excellent. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. David, what about you?
Well, Blast from the Past. I just rewatched 2012's Paranorman, stop motion goodness from Leica. I just absolutely love that movie. It's charming. It's got heart. Amazing character design. The aesthetic all around. Very cool. Very, very cool. It surprises me every time I watch it in new and exciting ways. And I've actually turned a few of my grandkids on to Paranorman and Coraline and Nightmare Before Christmas. So they're into all the ooky spooky stop motion stuff, which is pretty cool. Oh, and also Scott, thanks to you, I now need to watch Outland, which I literally saw in 1987, probably, or 86, in the guard shack at Camp Pendleton. I was in the Marines, and we were, you're sequestered. They're waiting to go out and do stuff. Actually, I was being sent to be part of a team of Marines that goes to funerals, with the flags and the rifle firing and all that. But in between, somebody threw an outline, and I was loving it. And then we had to go do our duty, and so I never got back. So I saw like the first third of the movie and thought, I'm liking this. So why has it taken me all these years to finally just do it? So,
and Dave, on that note, yesterday being Veterans Day, thank you so much for your service.
Oh, that's very
Absolutely.
kind of you. I had an easy run of it, but thanks. I appreciate that very much. So my
Dave,
endorsement will be Paranorman 2012.
If you like Paranorman, you should check out Missing Link if you haven't already.
I haven't yet. No,
it's the same studio, and it's their Bigfoot movie, and it is so charming.
Yep, yeah. It's one that I'm slowly working my way towards. So
Kubo also was really fantastic. Just beautiful. Oh, love it.
Those movies are definitely in my wheelhouse. And I just want to say how much I just love being here, chatting with folks and just listening to all your voices. And thanks for making me laugh so many times tonight. Thank God I was muted most often.
This has been such a delight.
I have jokingly been calling this Draxgiving, but like I am serious that this feels like a proper Thanksgiving get together. Only there has been no arguments that were and everybody is delightful, and unfortunately no gravy, but there
was the argument of Jason not respecting Ghostbusters enough.
Well, I mean, that's not an argument. He's just wrong.
That does feel very family Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not sure, but I don't think it's necessarily unanimous that Ghostbusters is the greatest movie ever made.
Uh-oh.
I could be wrong.
Anybody who just first of all, I'm now going to burn my Scott Chesebrough fan club t-shirt.
This feels like a Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, there we go. Now we turned it back around.
I did say I didn't think so. It might be. Yeah.
It is written in the book of the law that Ghostbusters is that is peak cinema. Martin Scorsese, Ghostbusters is peak cinema. That's an actual quote.
Oh,
really?
No,
I actually wanted us.
Marty Scorsese.
He's like those comedians that always go true story, and then they tell you something that's totally not a true story.
But
Scorsese, you could say just about anything, and I would be like, probably. That sounds like him.
I mean, I am usually right when it comes to this sort of thing, and I'm saying Ghostbusters is. I mean, there isn't any other movies that are better than that. It just is.
I'm sorry I started that back up again. Apologies.
I really would like, I wish that we could spend a whole nother episode just on, Wither Scorsese and his wisdom about movies and because it's so complicated and it's so difficult to figure out where we stand with it, because I find myself both disagreeing and agreeing with everything he says, and so, but I sound like this boring guy at a cocktail party going, no, I kind of see some of that. So whatever. I just want to, my first endorsement, I'm holding this Dracula book that I just pulled off my shelf while we were discussing this movie, and I found in the middle of it a paper heart that has a little picture of a vampire on it, with a crown. I think this is like a princess vampire, and it says "I love you, Daddy." So this was drawn by Kaz, my son, when he was like a tiny child.
That's nice.
I know, it's super nice, right? So that was. So my first endorsement is Lost and Found Valentines, with vampires on them, which is super weird. So, but my endorsement thing to watch. I watched Beyond Tomorrow, which I'd never seen before. Joy and I watched this. We watched it on Riff Tracks, but you can see it almost anywhere. And it's a 1940 Christmas movie. That is sort of has elements of It's a Wonderful Life and elements of Scrooge, and about these three old men who take this young couple under their wing, and then come hell or high water are going to try to keep them together, and even if death gets in the way. It's really cool, and I'd never heard of it before, and it was on Riff Tracks. So
that was another late night I'm just gonna watch a bunch of stuff, and it was tangentially, I think
Yeah.
it was lumped into the you may also like. So I saw it the original version first,
Yeah.
and then saw the Riff Tracks version later. But I've seen it several times. Yeah, it is just wait, why don't more people talk about this? You know,
I'd never heard of it before.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think
So
it's
it's a
cool.
wonderful, sometimes slightly spooky, tear-jerky Christmas fantasy from 1940. So I dig it. All right, everybody. I'm moved that everybody would be here, and I'm so honored that you would spend time with us, and thank you very, very much. And to the listener, David, I assume that you can put this on your feed as well. And so to the listener, just send us questions and bitch at us if you don't think we were respectful. And
And we should also raise a toast to all the people that make the movies.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Great.
My glass
We
is empty. So
appreciate all of your hard work.
Yes.
And until next time.
Until next
You
time.
can find us. You can find us in many places. Castle of Horror podcast and Monster Movie Happy Hour.
Yes. Well said. Well
Oh,
said.
and Jason,
Yes.
we should
Yeah.
plug the fact that you interviewed the director of this film.
Oh yeah. I
for
mentioned that at the very
Castle
beginning,
of
but
Horror.
yes, yeah,
Yes.
I did actually interview the director, Mr. Overdahl. So if you go back to August, you can find that interview, and we talked about what he wanted out of this, and just what a technical arduous feat it was. So yes, thank you, Julia, for mentioning that. So all right, everybody. Be kind to one another. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Happy Thanksgiving!
Cheers!
Take care.
Happy
Yes.
Draxgiving!
Happy
Yeah.
Draxgiving!
Yes, indeed. Draxgiving. I love it.
Awesome.
I love it. Oh, that's what this card is for. That's what this little heart is for. It's a Draxgiving card.
Yeah.
Nice.
Why not?
Nice.
Oh,
I love it.
Okay.
Ciao.